All right. Yesterday, we talked about Katherine Johnson, and we talked about how she helped get us to the moon and into outer space, and she did a lot of amazing things. And at the end, we made a paper airplane, and I gave you the challenge to see how far you can make it fly with different angles. So if you threw it at a 0-degree angle straight ahead, if you threw it kind of diagonal up at a 45-degree angle, or if you threw it straight up. Now, who was able, just raise your hand if you were able to do that experiment. All right, I see some hands up. Put your hands down, and if you were able, if it flew the farthest going straight ahead at 0, can you raise your hand for me? If it went straight ahead at 0 degrees, okay?
Yeah.
Some of you had it going farther at 0. How about at 45, going up a little bit? It flew farther for you? How about going straight up in the air at 90 degrees? Did that do the best for anybody to go the farthest distance? All right, when I tested it out, my 0-degree went pretty far, but it seemed like my 45-degree went even farther. And I'm wondering if that's because it went up and then it took longer to get back down so it could go.
Hi.
All right, so that's something that Katherine Johnson had to use math to figure out which angles and which, how fast the rockets had to go to get to outer space. Now, since she helped us get to the moon, we are going to see how astronauts get to the moon and return back to the moon. So today, while I wish that I could take us on a field trip to outer space, I just can't do that. But we are going to watch some videos of outer space. And first, we're going to see how they blasted off for Apollo 11. So this is the first time they went to the moon. And this is something that Katherine Johnson worked on to help them get there. Amari, do you have a question real quick before we start?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Did we miss anything while you was doing the test?
What, honey?
I said, did we miss anything while we was doing? Did we miss anything that we was?
You're echoing. Because you were taking a test. No, you're good. We're just starting. Okay? Awesome. All right. So I'm going to first show you the launch to the moon on Apollo 11, the first time when Neil Armstrong stepped out onto the moon. So you will get to see that. Okay? So give me a minute. I'm going to share this with you. Maybe.
Miss Bookman, guess what?
What?
One time I was looking on star chart, looking at the planets, and I looked at Uranus. Right next to there is a star that has my name.
Oh my goodness, that is awesome. That's so cool. All right, here we go.
For things you want to know. Have you ever been on a road trip? How about a 3-day road trip? That's about how long it takes to get to the moon. 3 American astronauts began their road trip to the moon on July 16, 1969. Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Edwin Buzz Aldrin blasted off in the Apollo 11 spacecraft from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida on a mission that would change the world forever. Back on Earth, 600 million people all over the globe watched this incredible expedition. Before touching down, the trio split up. Collins stayed on board Apollo 11's command module, the Columbia, where he would remain in orbit around the moon. Armstrong and Aldrin boarded the lunar module, the Eagle, an aircraft designed for 2 astronauts to land on the moon's surface. Wearing bulky spacesuits and backpacks of oxygen to breathe, Neil Armstrong stepped out, becoming the first person to walk on the moon. Shortly after, Buzz Aldrin joined his partner, launching themselves into the history books. Armstrong and Aldrin spent about 2 hours exploring and collecting samples of the moon to bring back to Earth. But before getting back on board, they left behind a few mementos: their backpacks, an American flag, a small gold pin shaped like an olive branch, and a patch from the never-launched Apollo 1 mission. All was going well until one of the astronauts accidentally knocked loose the circuit breaker that fires up the engine to get them back to the orbiting command module. Collins was their only ride home. But it was Buzz Aldrin who saved the day with a pen, pushing the breaker back in place. The spacemen re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, splashing down in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, marking the first successful human-operated spacecraft to the moon and back. Mission accomplished, and the world celebrated their safe return. Humans set foot on the moon. What planet is next?
You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
All right, so that is how Apollo 11 got to the moon. And if you recall, when a rocket, here's a rocket here, when a rocket uses its parts, it gets rid of it to lighten the load to get all the way to space. So remember, after like the rocket or the boosters are done doing their job, blasting it off into space, those fall off of the space shuttle, and different things come apart as it goes. So once they got to the moon or close by, there were 2 modules left. So I'm going to use this Easter egg to show you. So there were 2 modules, okay? And when they got to the moon, they separated. In this module, there was 1 astronaut, and he continued to go around the moon. And the other module had 2 astronauts in it, and they landed on the moon. They got out, they walked around and explored, and when they were done, they got back in, and he's still going around the moon here, and they blasted back up and connected to him, and then they went home, okay? So it separated, and then they went back together. So now I'm going to show you a little clip, and this is actually of Apollo 13, the one that Katherine Johnson saved. Remember, we learned that yesterday, how she saved these crew members. So this is going to be how they come back to Earth. Now, this is over 50 years old. It's before they had color TV, so it's in black and white, but you're going to see them, and what you'll see is the sky, and you're going to see them returning from the moon back to Earth, okay? So it's just about a minute and a half that we'll watch.
Is it going to show Katherine Johnson?
It's not going to show Katherine Johnson because she wasn't on the shuttle. She just helped make it possible.
Over the weekend.
Somebody's echoey. All right, hold on. I'm going to share this with you.
Guess what, Miss Buckmanic?
Yeah.
I'm looking at the moon right now
You are?
on Star Chart.
Oh, that's awesome.
But I don't see any footprints or anything left on there.
When did
No.
Catherine
They
Johnson
should be
die?
there because there's not the wind to make them.
They should be there. I bet it was over 500 years ago.
It's only like 50 years ago.
There's no wind in space unless you make it, but you can't. It's impossible because you have to have that tank on your face.
Right. Okay. I'm going to show you guys this and then I'll be back. So watch the sky.
Standing by for confirmation of main chutes.
There they are. There they are. There they are. There they are. They've made it. All 3 chutes out. Listen to the crowd on the boat.
So they have their space capsule and then they have 3 big parachutes that are slowing down their
Extremely loud
fall.
applause here in Mission Control.
And you'll see them land in just a minute.
An extremely loud applause as Apollo 13 on main chutes comes through loud and clear on the television display here.
Authentic. Yes, venting the last of the fuel there. You saw that smoke go up?
We have a report from the Iwo Jima that Apollo 13 at a distance of 4 miles from the ship.
Oh, my.
The smoke you see is venting of RCS propellants, reaction control system propellants. According to 5,000, Apollo 13, there's a recovery and your chutes look good.
And they're in, and I make it no more than 5 seconds late. No more than 5 seconds.
When did Katherine Johnson die?
She just died last February.
Oh.
Not very long
I
ago.
wish I could meet her
I know.
with my grandpa who knows her.
I wish she could have come and talked to us. Okay, so they had a parachute that slowed them down, and we've done things with parachutes before, and we know that it catches a lot of wind and it slows things down. So after class today, I have a challenge for you if you are willing to take it. And what this challenge is to make a space capsule that can return from the moon to Earth, okay? So I'm going to show you some ideas, some supplies that you could use. You can use whatever you have at home. And again, you don't have to do this, but it's kind of fun. So the goal is to make your astronaut land as slowly and safely as possible, because you don't want them to splat down to the Earth because they wouldn't survive. So the first thing you're going to need is an astronaut. So here are some examples. I could use a Lego person, or I have a little teddy bear. I've got a little plastic animal or an army guy. You could use a tiny stuffed animal. You could use a rock. You could use whatever you want as your astronaut.
What about an egg? See if it's flat.
Yep. If it's a real egg, ask your parents first if that's okay, because that can make a mess. All right, then you need a capsule to put your astronaut in. So I'm going to use my little space pig here. And I could use, I have a plastic egg that I could put him in. I could use just part of it. I could use something like a little paper cup. I could use an empty toilet paper tube to put him in. I could use an empty egg carton. I cut a little piece off of this. I could set him in here, or I could cut it and fold that in half so it could cover him. So you need some sort of a capsule to put your astronaut in. And then what's going to slow the astronaut down?
Parachute.
A parachute. So you need something that can catch air. And here are a few examples that I just found around. I have a coffee filter, so that could catch some air. I have a little piece of foil that could catch some air. I have a empty bag. Okay. I have a little piece of fabric that I found, some scrap fabric that I could use, a piece of tissue paper. I could use a napkin, a paper towel, some toilet paper, something like that, but you want it to catch wind. And then you're gonna need something to attach. So I've got some ribbon or some string, some yarn, whatever you've got laying around that you can use. And then if you have any kind of tape, I've got masking tape, the clear Scotch tape, anything at all that you have that you can try to build. And what you should do first is take your astronaut and drop him and see how fast he drops. And then you want to build your capsule and your parachute and see if you can slow down the fall. You don't want him to go faster. You want him to slow down so he has a safe landing. Okay? So if you are able to make one, try to bring it to class on Thursday and show me. I would love to see what you make. Since we can't all make them right now, we are going to move on. And did you guys know that there are astronauts that are living in outer space right now as we speak? They live there. Isn't that cool? They live in something called the International Space Station. And there are Americans that live there. There are people from other countries that live there. They are astronauts. They do scientific experiments. They're figuring out how to live in space. But they get to go there and live for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months at a time before they come back to Earth. So we are going to look at a little bit of how life is in outer space. Because they have to live their lives just like we do. They have to do basic things just like us, but they have to do it a little bit differently because space is a little different. So if you came to my classes during our 2 virtual weeks where everybody was virtual, I asked people what their top choices were on what to learn about. And I've narrowed them down to a few that were people were really interested in learning about. So first, I'm going to show you a quick video overview of the International Space Station so you can see what it looks like. And then I've got 3 quick little videos to show you about how life is a little different there. Okay, and then stay on and ask your questions or share your stories, okay? So I'm going to share again, and I will be right back. Okay, so here's a quick tour of the space station.
Have you ever been on a really long trip and it felt like it took forever to get where you're going? Well, how would you like to take a long trip into space? That might sound like something you've read about in a book or seen in a movie, but for a select few people, it's real life. I'm talking about the astronauts who live in space for months at a time on the International Space Station. The International Space Station, or ISS for short, is in orbit above Earth. Astronauts live and work up there doing science experiments and learning about life in space. To get there, astronauts are carried up into space by rockets, and when they go home, they ride in space capsules that fall back to Earth. Let's take a closer look. Those big, flat, shiny things are solar panels, and they provide energy for the space station. They capture sunlight, and they turn it into electricity. The space station uses that electricity to power lights and computers and everything else that makes the ISS go. This is a robot arm. Astronauts inside the station use this arm by remote control to fix things on the outside of the ISS. Although it might not look like it, the space station is kind of like a big house. It has 5 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen, which the astronauts call a galley, and they even have a laboratory, just like we do in the fort. But as you can imagine, life on the space station is a lot different than it is back home on Earth. For one thing, all of the water that astronauts use has to be flown up by rockets. Since it's so hard to get up there, water is only used for drinking and eating. So astronauts don't take baths or showers with water. Instead, they wash up with special washcloths. But probably the biggest difference is that there's much less gravity up in the space station than there is here on Earth. Instead of sticking to the ground like we do at home, astronauts up there just float around. So in a way, it's a lot easier for the astronauts to move around because there's less gravity, but after a couple of days in space, their muscles actually get weak. So astronauts on the space station have to exercise at least 2 hours every day to give their muscles a workout. But the rest of the time, the astronauts are conducting experiments. They'll study plants to see how they grow in space, and they'll study small animals like fish to see how their muscles do in low gravity. They even study how robots work in space. Say hello to Robonaut 2. He's a robot like Squeaks who lives on the space station full time. He's on board so astronauts can see if robots work as well in space as they do on Earth. R2, as his friends call him, can use tools and even go on a spacewalk by himself. Spacewalks are when astronauts leave the space station in a spacesuit to do work on the outside of the station, but they don't do them very often. Spacewalks are only for when astronauts need to fix things on the ISS or to gather information for experiments. So, life on the International Space Station is hard work, and it's really different than life at home. But if you ask me, the astronauts who get to go there are pretty lucky because they actually get to live in space. Thanks for joining us on SciShow, kids. Maybe one day if you work really hard, you can go.
All right, so the International Space Station it's right outside of Earth, and it goes around the Earth 16 times a day. So they get to see the sun rise and the sun set 16 times every single day. And we can actually see the space station at night right after sunset or right before the sunrise in the morning, certain times. So there are, I'll put it on the Clever page, but there's a site that you can go and see when exactly the space station will be outside, that you can see it, like what time. So that's pretty cool. All right, hold your questions, just a couple more minutes. All right, the first thing we're going to see is people were interested in how do you bathe in space? If everything floats, how do you clean yourself? So I found a pretty cool video because they can't have showers and baths. And this is an astronaut sharing with us how she washes her hair. And she has some major hair that she has to take care of. So hold tight and I'm going to show you how to wash your hair in space.
Miss McManus.
Yes.
Next time when we see you, can we see how they can do things in space without with on the moon? How do they live? I want to know how they live on the moon.
Nobody has lived on the moon yet, but in 3 more years, they're planning on going back to try to do some more exploration because we haven't been there in 50 years.
Nope.
So these are the only people that live in space right now in the International Space Station. Okay.
Where do they have beds in the? Do they have?
We're gonna see that. Just hold tight. Oh. Sorry, this is not what I'm showing you. Here, if you want to see this real quick, this is a bathroom in outer space because they do have to use things a little bit differently. See that hose up there? That is how they go number 1, and it's like a little vacuum because you don't want things floating around. And down here is their tiny little toilet that also has kind of a vacuum in it to keep it clean. So moving on from there, here is what I meant to show you.
Hi there. I've had a lot of people ask me how I wash my hair in space, and I thought I'd show you how I do it. Let's see. To get started, these are the things I need. A bag of warm water, a little no-rinse shampoo, towel, and my comb. What I like to do is start by just putting some hot water, squirting it onto my scalp. And I have a mirror here so I can kind of watch what I'm doing. Sometimes the water gets away from you and you try and catch as much as you can. And I just work the water up through to the end of my hair. And I take my no-rinse shampoo and squirt it also on the scalp, just a little bit, and rub it in. Again, kind of working it out to the ends. And sometimes I'll actually take my comb to help work it all the way to the ends. And I like to take my towel while I have the shampoo in there and just kind of work it. Because without standing under running water, you kind of need to use the towel a little bit to help get some of the dirt out. I like to follow that by a little more water. It's called no-rinse shampoo, but I think it's best to use a little water with it. Actually feels kind of squeaky clean right now.
All right, so did you see how she just put a tiny bit of water, but it filled up her whole head because water kind of acts differently in space. But didn't she have some cool hair to be floating around like that? So she still has to keep herself clean. She just has to do it a tiny bit different from us. Now, another thing we do every single day is we eat. And some of you are probably about ready to eat some lunch right now. So I'm going to show you really quickly how they eat in space because things float away. And then I'm going to show you how they sleep in space, okay? Because I know we only have another couple minutes left. So hold on tight, and then that's all we'll do for today. Hi.
How can we find these videos?
They are on my Clever page, and I will, why is this not working? They might be in a different space, but I'll make sure that you can see them. But they are on my
Talk
Clever.
about space food. In the early days of space exploration, food was mostly squeezed out of tubes and brought up in dehydrated packets. But today, we can have quite a variety of food. There's all sorts of things that we normally consume on Earth that we have here in space. We just need some minor adaptations. In the case of sandwiches, we had to substitute for bread. So we decided to use tortillas. But why? Mostly it's because bread, of course, makes crumbs. When you eat them on Earth, the crumbs fall down to the ground. But here, crumbs are just going to float away. On the other hand, the tortillas that we use are heat treated and specially packaged in an oxygen-free environment to prevent mold from growing. They're packed in packages like this. And thanks to that process, a tortilla like this can be good for 18 months. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up our tortilla. We're going to get our peanut butter, squirt it onto the tortilla, get our honey, squirt that on there, and we will have peanut butter honey sandwich in space. Open up the tortilla, and voila, a weightless tortilla. Okay, we got one tortilla. Whoa, got away. Take my peanut butter, open it up.
That's so funny.
Space scissors. They're attached by a tether so they don't go floating off. Take the scissors, open the peanut butter pouch. Peanut butter's open, squeeze it onto the tortilla carefully. And now a little honey. Hey, I noticed something cool about the honey. Instead of the bubble sitting up at the top, because there's no gravity to make it float up, the bubble is floating in the middle. Okay, all closed up. And the envelope peanut butter and honey is ready to eat. Not too bad. Last piece of my sandwich. It's been pretty delicious. But my hands are all sticky. Got to clean up. We don't have a sink. We don't have running water. Got to wash yourself up some other way. Disinfectant wipes. All cleaned up. Nice and hygienic on the space station. This goes in the trash. Lunch is over. Delicious.
All right, so that's pretty similar to us. I wish my lunch floated around. It doesn't. But other than that, he's eating foods that are very similar to what we can eat. And here is how to sleep in space.
We keep busy on board the space station. Long days, lots of work, physical exercise. At the end of it, you're tired. But how do you sleep in space? In order to make it comfortable for the astronauts, originally, they were going to put us all in one habitation module with sleep stations all around it. But the way a station was eventually built, we have sleep stations inside Node 2, which is in the forward part of the station, and inside the service module, which is in the aft. A total of 6 small bedroom sleep stations, or sleep pods. And inside each one is just a sleeping bag tied to the wall. You might think it's uncomfortable not having a mattress and a pillow, but without gravity, of course, you don't need anything to hold you up. You can just completely relax. And you don't even need a pillow. In space, you don't even have to hold your head up. So you can relax every muscle in your body, and your arms float up in front of you. Your head tips forward. But before I go to sleep, I got to put on my pajamas because I have space jammies. I'll be right back. Great. I'm in my super comfy Russian full-length pajamas. Nice for when you have to get up in the middle of the night, and ready to go to bed. I'll show you where I sleep. This is my sleep station, my sleep pod. This is where I spend up to 8 hours every day here on board the space station. It's actually on the floor, but once you're inside, you just can't tell.
All right, so they are able to sleep. There's 4 modules, so somebody even sleeps upside down, but they can't feel that they're sleeping upside down because they don't feel the gravity. Isn't that cool?
Does the blood rush to their head still?
Nope, because they don't. There's no concept of gravity up there, so they just kind of float. It doesn't even. They don't even realize if they're upside down or not. So they can be in any direction. They have computers and different work surfaces on all sides because they can hang upside down and do work. So they can make use of all of their walls, which is pretty cool. So I do have some extra videos that I have on my Clever page of outer space, living in the space station, and I'll keep adding more as I see them. I know some of you have to go, so thank you so much for coming. If you have questions, please stay. If you want to make a space capsule, I would love to see it on Thursday. Okay.
Miss McManus.
Bye.
Bye.